Good evening, everybody. Let's all stand as we sing our first song, Redeemed.
167 weeks in a row that we've had at least one motorcycle here. And the weather has been good on Mondays. Isn't it nice riding weather? Low humidity, sun is out, it's been good. Pretty much. All right, tonight we'll be headed out to Hoover's, one of our favorite places to go on Ward Road in Sanborn. And the Bikers at the Bakery continues every Wednesday night at Olson's Bakery and Cafe, 8500 Heritage Drive in Williamsville. We'll meet you out there at 7 o'clock. Marv was on the grill this past Wednesday, rolling the dogs, and had coffee for us. This Saturday is the Salt and Light Festival, Biker Blessing. We're going out to support the Christian missionary, not Christian missionary. What does CMA stand for? I'm having a Christian Motorcycles Association. Thank you. Wow. All right. It was nice to be with you tonight. This is my last night. So we'll be riding out to Gasport to support the Christian Motorcyclists Association doing a biker blessing. Now, if you want to go, but you know, it's like, hey, it's stupid for me to ride to Walmart from where I am and meet you there. I put some maps out on the box that you generously drop your money in every Monday when you come in. We thank you for that. So you can just grab a map. The directions are from the Walmart Supercenter, but you'll be able to map quest it yourself and see where this event is. It starts at 3, so we're going to be out there for that, and then just do whatever you want to do after that. If you've got a child, grandchild, niece, nephew between the ages of 4 and 10, we're having a Bible school on Tuesday, July 22nd through the 25th. It's 10 to 11:30 a.m. Everybody look, where is she? Everybody look back there in the corner. See Dawn in the pink shirt back there? She's putting together, for the most part, some pillows embroidered that say God bless you, and the kids are going to finish them up. And on Friday we're going to take them over to the Graff Nursing Home and deliver them. And so if you've got a child between the ages of 4 and 10, we'll also be having Bible stories and songs. And if you can give us an hour and a half of your time any one of those days, we would appreciate it. And we'll go on to the next one. And that's it. Okay. A couple other things I want to talk about, actually mainly one. If you ordered a t-shirt, they're in, and we've been trying to track you down and give them to you. We've got almost everybody. I do have a few extras, so if you're interested in one of these, see me afterwards. For $15 you can have one, and these are like Model A Fords. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. All right? You ordered your special, yeah. Look at Gleason. Orange, work in the highway department. The other thing is the extra ones I have are all large and 2X. So if you're somebody that big, fine. If you're small, maybe you want to get it for a pajama shirt or something. I don't know. I think I only have 4 extras. All right, I'm done with all that. We're happy to turn things over to our buddy Benson tonight to bring us the word.
Anyone ever been on antibiotics? Raise your hand. Right, and all of you are alive right now, which means obviously it worked, right? So if you were sick right now and a doctor, if you needed antibiotics and the doctor said, oh, here's a prescription, and then you went over the counter, you got the prescription, and someone said, and then the pharmacist says, here you go. You take it, right? The question is, if you want to get well, are you going to do what it takes to get well when you're sick? And that's one of the questions for tonight. It's actually one of the questions for John chapter 5. We've been going through John, the Gospel of John. We'll be going through it for the rest of the summer through ride season. And tonight we're on chapter 5. And this question of getting well is how the chapter starts out with in John chapter 5. The first part of the chapter is this little story of a guy that was crippled for 38 years. And Jesus comes up to him, and if you could put the verse up on the board, or on the screen, it says, when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? Now, when people read this passage, there's a couple different responses people get. One of the things people just look at it and they say, well, of course, well referring to, do you want to no longer be crippled because you've been crippled for 38 years so far? obviously Jesus was saying that because the guy did want to be healed. He was in this section in the city of Jerusalem where there's these pools, okay? And he was trying to go into the pool, and supposedly one of the pools has healing water, okay? And so the guy wants to be healed. Jesus comes up to him, sees the conditions he's in, knows what the deal is, asks him, do you want to get well? And that's a great question. But the thing is, if you look later into the chapter, you realize there's a deeper issue at heart with this guy. It doesn't exactly say what the deeper issue is, but it does say that this crippled person, and it doesn't clarify when, but it does say that he was in sin. Because Jesus says at one point, go and sin no longer. Now a lot of people will look at being crippled, and they will look at sin, or this idea of being disobedient to God, and they will connect the two and make it out to be as if the two have something to do with each other all the time. And you know what? There's a good reason why people do that. My mom has rheumatoid arthritis. It's a blood disease. It's an autoimmune disease. And so she has pain. Not only that, but she has scabs on her body. Sometimes she hides it pretty well, and people will look at it almost looking like she's a leper, and assume maybe she's contagious. I don't know. I don't know what that is. But the point being, my mom has that, and I've seen my mom look at me straight in the eyes and say, is God punishing me? And this is a very mature Christian woman, and she still asks that question. And the reason why is because when we go through any sort of trial, tribulation in our lives, even on a physical level where we're suffering, we got a disease, we're crippled for 38 years, we tend to start to ask ourselves the question, did I do something wrong? That's a natural question. That's a good question. The Bible gives two answers. One of them is, yes, you have. The other one is, that's not always the case with everyone. Sometimes people really are just crippled. Other times people do have a deeper problem. The Bible talks about both kinds of people. But I'm not talking about being crippled tonight, and I'm not talking about diseases tonight. I'm talking about the deeper problem that Jesus was kind of anchoring into throughout the entire Gospel of John. Because when he says, do you want to get well? Yes, he's asking a man who needs to literally physically get well. But there's another look at getting well for the human race, and it starts at the heart. Of course, this is nothing new for anyone who's ever heard a preacher preach any aspect of the Bible. Of course, you've probably heard stuff like, oh, you got a sick heart, you got to take a pill. What's the pill? Jesus. Jesus helps you be healed in the heart. But sometimes we just need the first step to get on that process. It's not always easy, because some people will go to church and they'll hear all this stuff about how Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. No one can come to the Father before him. They'll hear about how Jesus can heal every disease and sickness. They'll hear about how Jesus can transform your life. But all too often, it's not easy to know exactly where to start, other than just going to church or something like that. So the question of do you want to get well is a good question, but the answer is also something that needs to be said. And it starts out small. Okay? Throughout the rest of the we're going to go away from this story for a second, and we're going to talk about how the Jews responded to what happened. Because in this story, Jesus did heal this man. He said, take up your mat and walk out of here. So the guy was healed. It was a miraculous healing. He gets up, he gets healed, everything's great. Later on, Jesus meets up with him, tells him to go and sin no more. But in the midst of this happening, the Jews, which were Jesus' people, looks at this healing, and instead of rejoicing at the fact that a man who for 38 years could actually walk for the first time, they condemn Jesus. Why did they condemn Jesus? Because he healed on the Sabbath day. Now, the Jews have this regulation from the Old Testament, do not work on the Sabbath. Jesus was supposedly working, right? And they condemned him. The reason why they condemned him is because they themselves had a sickness. Their priority was off. Anytime you see a group of people, especially if they're religious of any nature, they go to church, they claim to have God in their lives in some way. Anytime you see them look at a man who doesn't walk for 38 years, and then all of a sudden has a miracle, and all they do is condemn, and all they do is have a negative attitude, you wonder where their priorities are. They might be right about something, but you kind of wonder where their priorities are. And you know what? I kind of wonder where the Jews' priorities were in this chapter, and so did Jesus. And what the problem was with them was they didn't believe. Now this is a common word in this Gospel of John. You'll hear over and over and over again. Now, I just want to clarify what belief is. Belief, right? Belief is when you hold to something to the point where you act out on it, right? That's a simple definition. It's not just, in your head saying, yeah, I believe in that, whereas, I admit that it's true. You admit that it's true to the point where you act out on the fact that you admit that it's true. So if you have faith in God, you will act out on that faith. That's what belief is according to the Bible. Okay? Now, the question is, what problem did the Jews have? They had the problem of unbelief. But I want to ask the question, what's the deeper problem that they had? Because that's what the chapter takes us to. In John chapter 5, later on in the chapter, in verse 44, can you put that up there, please? Jesus says, how can you believe if you accept praise from one another, yet make no effort to obtain the praise that comes from the only God? The reason why they didn't believe, in spite of the testimony of a miraculous healing of one man, in spite of the testimony of John the Baptist who said who Jesus was, they still didn't believe in Jesus simply because they had a deep-rooted problem. And what was that problem? That problem was they didn't seek God's glory in any way. Now, if you want me to put this in practical terms, I'm going to. A couple of years ago, I worked in a restaurant before I worked here full-time. Worked at Bob Evans' restaurant down on the farm. Good breakfast cooking, right? A lot of people like Bob Evans, and I worked there for 13 years, from June of '99 until like 2.5 years ago, or 1.5, whatever. And I was a cook. I was also kitchen prep. I was in the kitchen all the time, and I consider myself a really good cook. Well, the thing is, you'd all say, we were in a corporation, and you would often hear these expressions in the kitchen: stick it to the man. Anyone know what that means? It's a big corporation. Don't do what they want you to, because guess what? They're only greedy and they're after all this money and they don't care about us. We would talk that way in the kitchen, and often you would see that actually happen in this corporation. I'm not trying to downplay Bob Evans. What I'm saying is, when you work for a corporation, it's easy to get along that line of thinking. It happens a lot with a lot of companies, I've noticed, with a lot of people. So I'm in the kitchen the one day, and I'm overtired. It was a holiday. I forgot what holiday it was, and I had about 2 hours of sleep. And I get back from break and go onto the grill line as busy as ever. We got orders up the wazoo. And this kid, manager in training by the name of Matt, who's about 5 years younger than me, walks past the line, sees me without my cook hat on, because I went right to the line. Our general manager told me to go to the grill line. He's like, they need help. They're getting killed. You got to help them out. So I punched in early. I went to the line without the cook hat on. And the manager in training walks by. He's like, Benson, get your hat on. Now he said it was mean. I mean, it was, it's like, oh wow, Mr. Attitude over there. Okay, he's like, okay, Matt, no problem, I will. And he keeps walking, and I don't do it. Not because I'm being disobedient, but simply because we were getting killed, right? Well, 3 minutes later, same thing happened again. And I'm like, Matt, I'll get the hat on. It's just these stupid paper hats. I'll get the hat on. Just give me a minute. We're getting killed here, And he's like, no, get the hat on now. I'm like, no. I start getting disobedient, And before you know it, it's an all-out confrontation. It's a war on the grill line. It's busy as ever. And this manager in training and this hot-headed 30-year-old are going at it with each other, right? And he's like, get in the office. I'm like, no. Get in the office. I'm like, no. Now, mind you, I knew on the inside I'm a Christian, I shouldn't be doing this, but I just kept going because the leverage of power was there, and I'm feeling the power from my, all the other guys are like, yeah, go Benson, and I looked at him and I'm like, I cussed at him. Now, I don't normally do that. That's not my normal vocab. But I call him a B-I-T-C-H. I'm like, quit being a B-I-T-I-C-H. Get off the line and let me do my job. Oh, he had it. Now, I had never done that before with any manager in training, any manager of any kind. I'm usually respectful with authority. But, he ticked me off and I showed it. It wasn't a good witness. I got called into the office. I did not apologize in the office for anything, and I laid it on him in front of my general manager, and I said, you have no interpersonal people skills. You got to learn how to manage. If you want to actually have people obey you, you got to be a little bit nicer. So I started going off on him. And then all of a sudden, after that whole meeting, which by the way, my manager didn't make me apologize at all, but half a shift later, the guilt started riding so strong. And I took Matt back in the stockroom, the dry stockroom. I looked at him, I'm like, I think I was right for disobeying you because I was getting killed, but that's in the past. I am sorry for calling you that word. And, he was so thankful. Now here's the thing. As months went on, and this manager in training was having attitudes with all my other coworkers. They would all look at me and say, remember what Benson did to this guy? We could do the same thing. They were like, ugh. Benson did it, we can do it. That was my witness. It was leading some sort of rebellion against the manager in training, against authority. And the problem was, I was irrational because I was tired and angry. And I knew I was wrong in the end, but the younger guys still thought I was right. And that's what went on in the first century. The Jews rejected the authority of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm not saying Matt, that my former manager, and Jesus Christ is the same thing. They're not. Jesus is perfect, Matt wasn't. But still, I had the same attitude the Jews did in the day. I rejected authority, and because of the authority that I rejected, I became irrational. And when I was irrational, I started to have anger, and I treated someone the way I wasn't supposed to be treating them. Even if I was in the right, I had a bad attitude. It was not good. So what's my point? My point is the point of John chapter 5. And that is the greater problem that they had was they were seeking the praises that come from men and not from God. They were seeking the praises that came from their peers. Over the course of the months after I did what I did at that restaurant, I didn't want the praise of my fellow co-workers for sticking it to the man. Because I shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. And I shouldn't have been seeking the praises of my fellow peers. Okay? That's what the Jews were doing. They didn't care about authority at all. And the authority we're talking about in John chapter 5 is the authority of the Father in the Bible. The Father gave the authority to judge and to raise new life, raise people to new life in John chapter 5. That authority was given to him, and the Jews rejected his authority because of unbelief. But the reason they did not believe it was because they were only looking at each other's authority as if that was good. They were only looking at each other. They weren't looking at the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture for all of us? The bigger picture is this, that you may not understand God. You may question him sometimes. You may question his son. The Jews questioned his son, and they had hatred in his heart for him. And the reason why was because they were sick. And what was the sickness? They didn't recognize the authority that was given to Jesus from his Father. Sometimes The pill is laid out to you. You know, you want, what, are you not well? I can make you well. Here it is. Well, here's what I'm giving to you guys and girls tonight. And that's this. We're not supposed to be looking at how other people see us only. We're supposed to be looking at how God sees us in His authority, in His glory. Because once we do that, we start, or better yet, we stop acting irrational. We don't act like Nick Benson at Bob Evans on a holiday weekend, getting crazy mad when he doesn't need to be. You know? Because when you don't have that sickness, you will not act that way. When you recognize that what God says of you and what God demands of you is more important than your fellow peers cheering you on and what you do in your life, then when you recognize that, you're no longer sick. You can rise to new life. And you're not getting into arguments with other people when you don't need to be. And you're not cussing out other people when you don't need to be. And you're not treating people like crud when you don't need to be. Because that ruins a good witness for people. I realize real fast that I may not accept the authority of certain corporations. I'm kind of a hippie like that. I do not like the man. But it doesn't matter. I better like the man that the Father sent, and that's Jesus Christ. Let's all pray. Father, I thank you so much for what you've given us all, and that's your Son. Help us to understand that the best way for us to really get ourselves straight and to just believe and to act out on that belief is to start out with this. Is to worry about what you say about us, what you think about us, and to see the authority that you gave your Son. In Jesus' name, amen. Hope to see you guys.